on Jaguars.com from Rookie Minicamp, Day 2 at the Florida Blue practice fields. Welcome in, JP Shadrick with Jaguars.com senior writer John Oehser. Let's start off with the Day 2 situation. Of course, a different vibe now after what happened yesterday with Dante Fowler Jr. and the ACL tear. He's done for the year. Gus Bradley spoke this morning. Dante Fowler Jr. was in great spirits, so he spoke this morning. You can see both of those press conferences right now on the website, Jaguars.com. But let's start with that. You got to move forward, and it starts with that today.
Yeah, and it's difficult to call a press conference like that a positive press conference or happy press conference. Nobody's happy about that. And it's certainly a setback in the offseason, and it'll be a setback to some degree next season. But as positive as you can be and as good a feeling as you can have after that, I think you have it. And it's not just from Gus Bradley, who, as we know, is always positive no matter what, but Dante Fowler seemed in as good a spirits as possible. He believes he'll come back bigger, better, and stronger. And he's an upbeat kid anyway. We had talked to him a couple times before the draft, at the draft. I wouldn't have expected him to be in the tank. I wouldn't have expected him to be sort of dragging the crutches today. But, as you know, people will see it on Jaguars.com. As good as spirits and as positive and as focused on the long term as you can be, he can be. I think one thing that maybe helped him, and again, they can see it on the interview when they look at the website, Todd Gurley, who he worked out with in Pensacola before the draft. Evidently, he and Dante are very close. Todd Gurley reached out to him last night, and Fowler used the phrase, "I'll lean on him." Well, yeah, he's going to lean on a lot of people, but I think the fact that he was able to see Todd Gurley during this offseason up close coming back from this, I don't think that's insignificant in the way that he feels about things right now.
And it'll be interesting to see. Remember, he was never injured. He has not ever missed a game in his college career.
The only games he missed was because he was too big for Pop Warner.
That's right.
But you had that issue, too.
I was too big for a lot of things, John. But he's never missed a game. How do you handle that? And he seems to be handling it okay at least one day out.
Well, his quote was, "It's going to suck." And, you know, which is
smiling, though, when he said
right,
it.
Which I think is how everybody would feel. I mean, you're sitting there, you're the number 3 pick in the draft, you're ready. You're a kid who loves football, you're a kid who has special ability, and you're out here yesterday and you're showing what you got. You're quick, very quick on the bags over there, and it was striking how much different he looked than the other defensive linemen, by the way. But now all of a sudden you're looking at not just missing next year, but you've got, you know, anybody who's played this sport has known somebody who's rehabbed an ACL. And anybody who's known anybody who's rehabbed an ACL has heard the stories of it is a long process. It is not nearly the career-ending or threatening injury that it was even 20 years ago when I started covering the league, but it is still the quote you always hear from guys is, "I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy," because it's long, it's grueling, it's frustrating. So he's looking at that, and he knows that's going to suck, and he's also not going to be on the field. So a lot to deal with for a young man, and I'm sure he knows that there are going to be darker days ahead, but he didn't want us to see those dark days. And, you know, I think overall he'll also be able to learn from Shadrick Marks, who has been around. He'll be in the room with him, and Shadrick is handling the same situation about as well as you can handle it. A little different in that Shadrick's already established himself in this league, so he's got a body of work. Dante still hasn't proven that, but again, I just keep going back to the spirit of this guy. There didn't seem to be a lot of phoniness in his spirit this morning, and while it's going to be difficult, you get the idea that he'll be able to handle it, but it's a long time before we get to see this guy on the field, and that's difficult right now.
It certainly is, but the good thing Gus Bradley said is that he'll be around in meetings, he'll be traveling with the team, he'll be in that room, he'll be part of the group. Yeah. He just won't be able to go between the lines, which I think is significant.
And he seems to be an aware enough player, an aware enough person to know that you have to take advantage of that kind of time. You're in the meeting room with a guy like Chris Clemens. You're in the meeting room with Todd Wash. You're in the meeting room with people. There are certainly things you can learn. There's tape to be watched. There's size and strength to be gained. And that's all good. He should maximize that. But at the same time, he's not going to get that rookie year. So maximize whatever you can, but it's a tough situation.
So moving forward, there's no date set for the actual surgery. It's got to take some time I'm sure there's swelling but it's got to do the whole procedure. It usually takes a week or two for all that to go away in other rehab situations before you can even cut on the player. So they aren't really sure of the details of the surgery yet. And
it's not insignificant either that, there's no good time for this to happen. But if you're going to have it happen, you would rather have it happen now than week 1. Because at the very least, you've now got 15, 16 months before he has to be on the field again. So there should be he should have a better chance at coming back closer to 100% in his second year than, say, an Aaron Colvin did, who injured this thing in January. So, there's no bright spot to this. I'm not going to say that. But if there is a bright spot, it would probably be that it happened today and not in September 15th.
And just the mood in the building, obviously yesterday was very disappointed just from the personnel folks and everybody you saw walking the halls and just the initial reaction. And a lot of people who saw it out here, you had an idea that it wasn't going to be great right away. People who actually saw it, and you just hoped for the best and got the worst news late yesterday afternoon.
Well,
today is a little it seems that it come to terms with it. It is what it is.
Right.
You got to move on now, and that's kind of the mood today.
Well, a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, it wasn't really the worst news you could get, because it sounds like it was just an ACL from what Gus said. It doesn't sound like there was any periphery stuff. It doesn't sound like there was any problems around that. That's when you get into really concerning long period, is when it's the worst. And there are worse knee injuries than an ACL these days. Sounds like he's got that, which is a very, I don't want to call it ACL a standard injury because it's not, but it is something that doctors know how to deal with, and trainers know how to rehab, and athletes know how to handle now. But in the long run, so far, I think the reaction has been what you would expect. There was shock yesterday. There was are you kidding me? Right now, right in the middle of this, right in the middle of the season. So there was that. At the same time, I think there's a feeling in this organization, once you sort of step back from it, that 2015 was not the Dante Fowler story for the Jaguars.
Right.
Yes, he was going to be a big part, but they've made improvements all over the roster. They had a good draft beyond Dante Fowler. There are things happening beyond that. It's not good, but realistically, you probably drafted him more, as I've always said. You draft in the top 5 for the long term, for the 5 or 10 year, and you really don't realistically expect unbelievable impact in certain positions in the first year. So if you look at it that way, they've still got Leos on this roster.
Yes, with experience too.
If they hadn't drafted a Leo, we'd have been talking all week about either Amari Cooper or Leonard Williams of, okay, these guys, and you would have been worried about the Leo. So in that respect, if he can come back in 2016 fully healthy, then the fallout of this is, comparatively speaking, for the franchise, relatively minimal. Not to minimize his kid's importance or what he's going through, but if you're looking at, foundation of the franchise type stuff, this can still work out okay. And by the way, number 24 out here returning kicks in the end zone, your boy TJ Yeldon.
Yes.
I don't pretend to be Lageman or Baselli in terms of being able to tell if a guy's going to be great the minute I shake his hand. Those guys are seers, they're visionaries, if you will, so they can see that sort of thing.
Just ask them, they'll tell you. Yes.
But TJ Yeldon, to me, if there was a silver lining in the darkness of yesterday, to get a little dramatic there, he looked really good. And his feet and his vision, even on a minicamp day, even against tryout players, when I look at these kind of camps, I try to see something that makes me go home and say, hey, my 18-year-old son, here's what's different about this guy.
Right.
Well, TJ Yeldon looks like he has feet, quickness, vision in the hole. He looks different than your normal running back. So we'll see, but he looks like he could be solid.
And, he had a fumble early. I think his second touch of teamwork yesterday, the ball's on the ground, which was a concern for the folks in Tuscaloosa. Sure. But then he rallied and like you said, had a good end of practice.
Well, we all know he's got to deal with that. I mean, that's been a thing,
right.
And that can't happen in the NFL, obviously. So,
but he rebounded from it, which was good to see.
Yeah, well, he rebounded in a minicamp practice.
That's true.
He's not getting hit that hard. So that's going to be an issue, and people are going to talk about that. But there was a little bit of a question among fans, I think, of how does this guy compare to Gurley and Gordon? Is he special? Does he have special things? And there's a concern, well, maybe he's not the breakaway runner that some of those other guys are, and on paper he's not. But if you have that quickness in the hole and that ability to bounce outside, ability to make people miss, then that's a thing that creates productivity on running backs. It wasn't hard to see yesterday some traits that are a reason this guy was a top 40 pick. And that's significant. Sometimes second round, I mean, even Baselli when he first got here.
Right.
You looked at him and went, why? What is this?
Go ahead. Keep talking. Yeah, go ahead.
But I liked what I saw out of him yesterday. So,
John, we'll look forward to he's getting kicked off, by the way.
Get out of here, Oehser. Real talents here.
This is live television, folks. And Tony Baselli is with us now. We're going over the fallout of Fowler and trying to move forward a bit. But, I mean, you had an injury, not quite this severe, your rookie year, too, didn't you? And what's the mindset of an injury early like this?
Well, yeah, I actually dislocated my kneecap in training camp and got the knee scoped and missed 6 weeks. Was able to come back. I think it was the third game of the season, but third or fourth game. But it's it's hard in the sense of, and I think the biggest thing that Dante's fighting is, you come as a top pick and you're a competitive individual. You've excelled at what you've done. You don't get drafted third overall if you haven't, and you're good at what you do, and you want to come contribute. And you almost feel like you're letting people down. And he's got to fight that because the reality is he's not letting anyone down. He didn't do anything wrong. He got injured in the game, and he's going to be okay, and he's going to be better for it. And this franchise will be better for having Dante Fowler. It's just not going to be this year. And so he's got to try to change his mindset and say, listen, I'm not going to give into that thought of I'm letting people down. I'm going to get better, and I'm going to take this as an opportunity, as a bump in the road that's been an obstacle that's been placed in front of me, but I'm going to be better for it, and I'm going to get better, and I'm going to work hard and get back so I can contribute to this team next year.
It was really striking to see that press conference with him earlier today and his mood, smiling, and like you just said, I think he has his head on straight of what's next for him, and that's the first step, is to have the right attitude about what's been laid out in front of you. He said he had a great hour yesterday, but then he was happy to be on the field and all that, and then it just happened in an instant, and now he's got to move forward in a different way. And for a young guy like that, it might be difficult to come out in front of folks and say you're happy about the next step.
Well, it shows his maturity, and it also shows the great support of the franchise that, obviously he's been around him and said, listen, we're with you and you're our guy. And he's going to have to now go get to work and get the surgery and get it fixed. And then the rehab process for an ACL, which I've had, is grueling at first, and then it's frustrating because you feel like you're further ahead and you're ready to go, and you got to still kind of keep it in the barn a little bit because you got to be smart with that knee. So, and he's going to have to fight because one of the things that's reality in the NFL is once you're hurt, it's hard to feel a part of the team. Because they're out here practicing today.
Sure.
The show goes on.
That's right.
And I tell people all the time, whether you get injured or whether you retire or you're not playing anymore, they're still going to play games on Sunday and they're still going to practice and they got their job to do. And you have to find your place of getting better, and it's a little bit by yourself. I mean, you have the support staff of the training staff and the rehab guys and all that, strength and conditioning, but it's hard to feel a part of the team when you're going in one direction doing one thing and they're still trying to reach the ultimate goal, which is to win a championship.
Last thought on this. They say there's good days and bad days during a rehab, an ACL rehab especially. What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Oh, there's days you wake up where you can't sleep because the knee hurts so bad, especially early, and it's just miserable, and you're trying to get your range of motion back, and you're like, am I ever going to feel normal again? Is this knee going to feel right? And it can be very painful and frustrating, and then there's days where you're like, all right, man, I can feel this thing getting better. I can feel progress being made, and it's the ebbs and flows, and you got to really learn to persevere and keep your eyes, on the ultimate goal of what you're trying to do, and that's come back a better football player. So, listen, I have no doubt that Dante Fowler will be back, and I have no doubt that he'll be a guy who contribute in great ways to this franchise.
I know you weren't here yesterday, Tony, but you were getting ready for that cut party last night to benefit your foundation. But you're here today. What do you want to see out of today, moving forward now?
Well, as soon as you let me go, I'm going to be running as fast as I can, actually walking, down to Doug Marrone and Luke Buckus and the offensive line. I want to go watch those guys. And for two things, I want to see the young guy Kane and see what is it Kane or Can?
AJ Can.
Can.
Yes.
I always say Kane.
I know who you were talking about.
Yeah, Can. I'm going to go watch Can and see just how he moves. But more than anything, what I want to go watch is Doug Marrone coach. He's new to the staff, and he's someone I really respect for what he's done around the league. And I want to see him, what he's doing. And quite honestly, I'm going to try to steal some drills from him for my high school team.
It's interesting to see his mindset and the new coaches on the offensive side out here for the first time, too. Especially from Marrone. He was a head coach last year, and now he's coaching a position group.
He's a football guy. He's a football guy. I mean, bottom line. I mean, he wants to coach ball, and he wants to be and work with the big guys and get them better. I think he was a good head coach. He proved it at Syracuse, proved it at Buffalo, and we're very fortunate to have him as the offensive line coach.
Let's finish with this, Tony. Takeaway from this weekend overall, it is the start of something. It's not a huge part of the offseason program, but it's the first time you get to see these guys run around the field, see what was advertised about them, and get at least a little bit of an idea of what you have moving forward.
Yeah, the reality is you're looking at about 8 or 9 guys. Maybe a couple of the college free agents. And 1 or 2 of these guys that were invited for the rookie minicamp might fight to the next level and be a great story. But you really look at the guys you drafted, and I'm looking more forward to, the OTAs we have here coming up. I think in 2 weeks it is at JP. A couple weeks out. Mm-hmm. And then obviously training camp. I always tell you guys, and I start complaining, until we put the pads on, I want to see the big guys go to work. And it's hard to see much when you got just your underwear on with a helmet. So, but it'll be fun. It's just good to be out here. It's I love, football season. What this tells me more than anything, football season's getting closer, and that's what I look forward to.
Tony, enjoy that O-line drill down there. Appreciate
I can't wait, JP.
Tony Baselli.
Hey, it was good seeing you last night at the cut, too,
That was awesome, man. Great event. Tony Baselli joining us on Jaguars.com Live. Season tickets available for 2015. Get more this season. Become a Jag season ticket member and get access to amazing benefits 365 days a year. Seating options available for any budget. Visit Jaguars.com/tickets or call 633-2000 today. Live from the Florida Blue Health and Wellness practice fields as the Jaguars rookies are in day 2 of minicamp. The special teams drill has just finished, so they'll go into individual position groups now. And Brian Sexton joins us, senior correspondent for Jaguars.com.
I'm just trying to decide which one, and I think we'll take care of safe touch on this shot.
I think so. Day 2, I mean, we've talked about Fowler all day today.
You want my thoughts on it?
Let's hear it.
All right. So it was clear when he stepped to the podium today what they'll miss most. Because when you look at the numbers for rookie pass rushers, right, you look last year and the top 4 rookie pass rushers were Jadeveon Clowney, who got hurt, Khalil Mack in Oakland, Anthony Barr in Minnesota, and D Ford. Do you know how many sacks they had combined? 9.5.
Oh,
right. Okay,
not many.
And look, I mean, different players, different systems. I get it, but go back another year even further. So go back to 2013. Deion Jordan had 2. Ezekiel Ansah had 8. Barkevius Mingo had 5. Those were all 3 top 6 selections of Bjorn Werner and Dayton Jones had 6 combined. So I mean, when you look at it, the impact was not going to be the sacks. Or, maybe he turns out to be Von Miller, who has 11 and a half. You don't know. Yeah. But if you average it out and look, 5, 6, 7, 8 sacks. But here's what he brought, and it was clear when he stepped to the podium today, that energy, right? He's got that great big smile, and none of it's feigned. None of his optimism is feigned. None of his personality is less than genuine, and that's what they wanted. They needed that energy in the room. He's the future, long term. ACLs aren't what they used to be. He'll come back. He says he'll be stronger, but it was really clear. The numbers aren't what they're going to miss. The energy and building that spot with the defense and having that guy who comes in and is a part of it is what they'll miss.
Just through the halls here at Everbank last night and into today, just some of the personnel people walking around, kind of getting in their heads a little bit. It's if there, I don't want to say this the wrong way, if there's a silver lining or anything, we'll watch some practice.
Know exactly what you mean.
But the position group that this happened to, well, there are veterans that can play that position. It's not like they're going to not field a football team this year.
Well,
that's what I'm trying to mean.
And
I'm
what
not
you're really trying to say is
downplay Fowler.
No. Look, you're not better because you don't have Dante Fowler on the field this year. But they were 6th in sacks last year with 44, with Chris Clemens and Andre Branch. You hope that, and both of them are back this year, and you hope that Chris Smith takes a step forward. You hope the addition of Jared Odrick lets you do some different things with Tyson while you're trying to get Sinderic back to complete health. So really what they were hoping to get from Fowler was more turnovers. He's this really active guy, and more sudden pressure that forces a quarterback to make an errant throw. So you have to wait for that a little while longer. But the editorial that I did today that just went up on the website this morning, and I did that, by the way, before Fowler was injured. And I said my expectation for 2015 is more points, right? They averaged 15.5 points per game last year, and a good deal of those were after the outcome had already been decided. So they just couldn't score. I mean, you remember the second half in Philadelphia. You remember the first half up in Indianapolis last year. How about the first half against the Dolphins or the Steelers here? They're right in the game, and the offense can't get a first down. So here's how you alleviate the absence of a dynamic young player on that side of the ball. You score more points. And that's what we expect they'll do with an improved offensive line, with a guy like DJ Yeldon added to the backfield, with what Julius Thomas can do as a tight end, with, you hope, the progress that Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns, and Marquise Lee make. There's lots of ways around it. I saw that Adam Schefter from ESPN, who's a very well-respected writer, tweeted yesterday that it was a crushing blow. Well, at the moment, because I remember when Tony Baselli went down on the practice field in Stevens Point, Wisconsin back in '95. It was the same feeling. It was like somebody just kicked you in the stones. Oh, my goodness.
he just talked about that comeback.
And so the whole time last night before we knew, I'm thinking, all right, well, Chris Mortensen said he's done, and then he came back. Maybe we'll find out. Of course, we got the worst possible news for his rookie season, that he wouldn't be there. But I guess the point is, well, I've kind of forgotten my point.
It's okay. Brian Sexton with us, Jaguars.com live from Rookie Minicamp. You're taking a look at individual position drills, and there's TJ Yeldon, who yesterday, as we talked with John Oehser earlier, that was a bright spot of yesterday.
Yes, it was.
Fumbled early, but then recovered and showed his ability to shift, showed his vision, showed his decision-making ability on the fly, and looks like he might have something.
One of the things that you want to see, because so many of these guys will not be in an NFL camp, right? Anyone's NFL camp. But you want to see the guys that you drafted, guys like Yeldon, guys like James Sample, guys like A.J. You want to see those guys stand out physically. You want to be able to look. And when I stood and watched Sample yesterday on the special, clearly, of all the defensive backs, his shoulders are so broad and his arms are so big. He looks like he's ready to play in the NFL. The other guys don't. Same thing with TJ Yeldon with the other running backs over there. When he has the ball in his hands, not only does he look more physically ready to play, but his suddenness and his footwork. And of course, he played at the hallowed fields of Alabama, where he was very well coached. But he's also clearly a guy that's worthy of a high pick. That's what you want to see from these guys. You want to look and go, oh, yeah.
Oh, that's 6'1", 230-pound running back, that's our guy.
That's the 36th pick in the draft, and that's a guy who was invited here just to see if maybe he has something. It's supposed to be that simple.
Yes.
You're supposed to be able to see that.
This is the weekend for that.
You could, and I'm excited about Yeldon. I remember I watched him at Alabama a lot. He was with Eddie Lacy. He was with Derrick Henry. He was the perfect change of pace back for those guys, because while they were the power, he was the vision and the elusiveness, and I made the comparison over and over, but Edgerrin James drove me nuts when he played for the Colts, because you would think on 3rd and 5 you'd stopped him for 4 and he'd end up with 7. Right? He'd come out of the pile and slither for the extra 2 or 3 yards. And that's what I saw Yeldon do at Alabama. And if that's the kind of player he is in the NFL, the Jaguars probably got a very good running back.
All he needs is a little crease to get through on the line, and then gets to the second level, can shift left to right. I call it the L1, R1 button on the controller on PlayStation.
See, now there's
shift right and left.
There's the age difference between you and I.
Because he can get by
Your
a guy.
L1, R1, I'm going, are you talking about, the back?
Right.
The spinal column?
That's good news moving forward. We're scrolling around practice now, the individual position groups working in our final few minutes here live on Jaguars.com. So those guys stand out. That's the best part of this weekend. So moving forward, OTAs start, and a couple weeks after this, that's when it might come back down to earth just a little bit.
Oh, no, well, see, now that's where you really get a good look at these guys, because they'll step onto the field with guys who are their equal. In many cases, physically they're equal. And I can remember when Fred Taylor came out for his very first practice during a training camp. It was on the old practice fields on the south side of the stadium, and you could just tell. He had more burst, he had more explosiveness than James Stewart, who was also a first-round pick. It was obvious, but He didn't always see it. He was inconsistent trying to figure it out. And so that's when the learning really begins. I was talking to Neil Sterling yesterday, the 7th-round draft choice from Monmouth, and he had a couple of drops. And I asked him about the drops. He says, you know what those were? I said, stone hands, just kidding with him. And, he's a broadcaster. We talked to him, right? He's a broadcaster. He smiled. He said, no, I was thinking too much. He said, I was worried about, how many steps have I taken here? Jerry's right there. Am I cutting at the right angle? He said it wasn't just sudden and smooth. It was choppy, so then the ball comes and I'm not paying attention. So now you're going to see these guys as they get into it and they start to learn and get a hold of the offense and the competition level ratchets up. It'll be fun to see, these guys look a little bit lost because then you start to see the growth. Practice to practice to practice.
Right, and how do you come back from something like that?
Well, and look, you drafted these guys for their ability to come back. You fully expect them to make mistakes and to be lost. And then you fully expect them to progress through it.
One more thought before we stop our commentary here. We'll watch the rest of individuals.
Let's be honest. We'll stop our commentary into these microphones, but our commentary
it never
will
ends.
Roll all day. Absolutely.
It goes 24 hours a day.
Well, that's my wife.
I had an interesting conversation, just a different angle of a practice like this. Tony Washington, first-year player. I think there are 9 first-year Jaguar players that have been around the organization for a while that are eligible to come out here. And for these guys, they're not vets. I mean, they've been around only a year or maybe in 2 years, but limited time in games and on the roster and such. That's why they're eligible to play here. But for a guy like Tony Washington, this is just as big of a tryout as it is for any of these rookies because that's a crowded wide receiver room.
JP, remember what we said yesterday. These guys are dreamers. They're holding on to – they've played football since Pop Warner, and in most cases, whether it's the kid from Minnesota State or Tony Washington from Appalachian State, wherever they played Pop Warner, wherever they played high school, they were the cream of the crop. They were the very best. So here they are now at the very the zenith of football, and here's their chance, and they're trying to hang on. And now he's getting the opportunity. He's got to go out and give it his best. For him, he's here, right? Another year. But remember, he's got to make something happen because next year there'll be a whole nother crop of guys coming through. And if Tony Washington doesn't make it this year onto the practice squad and into a role with this team, well, then there won't be a third year.
Well, that's pressure right there.
It just is what it is. Yeah, you start to get 23, 24, and, time to move on.
Okay, one last day here.
I can tell you this from personal experience. You don't get faster. You don't get stronger. The older you get, you just try to keep it. You'll find that out.
Just trying to maintain.
You're pushing that L1, R1 button, maybe you're not going to be as quick in your reflexes someday.
One last day of rookie minicamp, Brian.
I like to keep you on your toes, JP.
Thank you, yes. And just in general, one last day here, one last hour and a half of work. What are you expecting today in general?
I'm expecting the clock to keep running.
Okay.
No.
Good.
I know, look.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, well, I told you yesterday, I don't get a lot from this other than I saw the rookie draft choices, and they look like they're the rookie draft choices. From this point, I'm still watching the coaching staff. It's fun to watch Jerry Sullivan coach.
Yes, it is.
He is a tremendous teacher. The fact that he is here for another year as this thing has rolled along. He stayed through the malarkey years and into Gus Bradley's. Greg Olsen comes back, a guy he knows. It's a testament to his ability to take young players and mold them. Larry Fitzgerald is his greatest advocate, so all of these young players are getting the benefit. I love to watch him coach. I'm going to go watch Doug Marrone a little bit today, the offensive line coach, because, again, he is thought to be one of the very finest teachers of offensive line technique that you'll find in the NFL. And so I'm really eager to see him in a couple of weeks during the OTAs, to see him with a Brandon Linder, with a Luke Jokel, with a Blanco. Really, really eager to see some of that stuff because I'm a big guy. I want to see those big guys get better.
Brian, well done, and we'll look forward to the coverage coming up after practice today.
You betcha.
There he is, Brian Sexton, senior correspondent, Jaguars.com. We'll leave you now. We'll stay live on video for the final moments of the individual position groups here. We'll have, of course, coverage after practice today of Gus Bradley's press conference. John Oehser will have his writing as well, and all that coming up in the next few hours here on Jaguars.com. Our thanks to Tony Waselli, our thanks to John Oehser and Brian Sexton, and for everyone involved, this is JP Shadrick. That's it for now from Jaguars Rookie Minicamp.
No sweat.